You're listening to The Crypt, and joining me on the show is Celtic Shamanic healer Declan Quigley. So you're very welcome to the show, Declan.
Thank you very much, Rita. Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, firstly, can you explain to us what shamanism is?
Well, shamanism, it's a bit of a catch-all phrase for those who connect with spirit in a very specific way. The word shaman, or shamanism itself, comes from Siberia, but it's been used in all different contexts, the Native American context and the Mexican, Peruvian context. And here in Ireland, we were doing the same things centuries and centuries ago, connecting the spirit in a very similar way as the likes of the Native Americans, And it's all about really connecting with spirit, feeling the energy of that, feeling the energy of the earth, and the power within that, and then ultimately using that power, or connecting with that power and working with the spirits, working with that type of earth energy, to provide healing and insight and all sorts of things.
It's not a religion, so where would it fit into modern theological perspectives?
Well, no, it's not a religion. It's, to be honest, it's more of a philosophy of life, because it is about the concept that everything is energy, and all that energy is in one web or one field. And if all these things are connected, for instance, myself, yourself, the chair you're sitting on, this type of thing, we all got energy. And to some degree, and to some lesser degree, all those things have got a level of consciousness. And it's about tapping into that consciousness. From a religious perspective, shamanism is a very personal thing. It's very much about how you connect with spirit and what spirit gives you back. There's no dogmas, there's no rules or regulations, it's simply guidelines, that would talk about respect for spirit, respect for the land, and the world we live in, and ourselves, of course, as well. So that's how it differs from religion. There are no dogmas, there are no rules and regulations, but a general perspective on things, But having said that, a lot of the modern religions are based on that philosophy, the philosophy that was worked with in the ancient indigenous cultures, So it's about tapping into that general field of knowing or cognizance or energy, and then applying that in a very particular way.
And what drew you to shamanism, and was it long ago you started your journey?
I suppose I began quite cynical about all this, as I'm sure a lot of your audience are, not knowing the details of it, and of course I think that it can be said that there has been a movement against connecting with spirit. But for me, I went along to a shamanic journey class. Now, the shamanic journey is the means by which, is a very particular and structured means by which to connect to spirit. So I went along to a class to teach me how to journey, and it was a bit of fun, And I did go along, I have to be honest. I did go along a wee bit cynical about it.
Yeah.
And then when I engaged in the shamanic journey, when I did the shamanic journey, a whole world opened up. It really opened up. Now, my particular perspective on it is that we all have psychic abilities. We all have the abilities to connect to spirit. I think in a lot of our cases, we are afraid of it, or we're encouraged not to get involved with this because it may be perceived as evil or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's not the case at all. It's the most loving energy that you're tapping into. And many would say it's the energy of God, So anyway, the point being, I went along to this class and the whole world opened up to me, and I thought, I was working as a child protection social worker at the time, and I think under a lot of stress, under a lot of pressure, and fighting to get money and home and all the usual, But ultimately, there came a question, should I stay in what I'm doing and, I suppose, deteriorate personally? Or should I get involved with this that my heart was being drawn to? So I took a leap of faith and became involved in this, and absolutely haven't looked back. The most wonderful thing I've ever done in my life.
And isn't it crazy to think you started off, so cynical about it, and now it's such a massive part of your life?
Well, absolutely, Rita, absolutely. I mean, one of the things is fear-based, really, that we're told that we don't know what to expect in this here, but it's a very beautiful, loving energy that we're getting involved in. It's very life affirming. It's very loving. Just a very loving energy. And then to use that, and then make that, as I have done, make that my life is just been the most wonderful thing.
You speak there now of positive energy. People who would go on paranormal investigations and, get involved in that kind of thing, can dark energy or bad energy get attached to you?
Well, let me put my perspective across, Rita. Yeah. I do not believe in evil. I don't believe in a devil. I have never found those things to be real in any kind of way. Now, having said that, I do believe that there are spirits about us, the spirits of those who were in life and have moved on, but not fully moved on. Now, if you're the sort of person who is grumpy or jealous or angry in life, to some degree you will bring those characteristics with you out of body until there is a point of cleansing. And I think that is what's responsible for some of the stories of demons and devils and all this sort of stuff, and dark energy, as you say, there are dark energies there, and we have to be wary of that, certainly, Realistically speaking, this big grid of energy that I spoke of earlier is all love. We are all love, So really, from my perspective, there are two forces working here. There's love, and then there's fear. And all these negative forces are based on fear. Once you get a perspective on that, then you can really work with the darker energies and clear that, Yeah. And that is one of the rules of the modern shamanic practitioner, I think, is working with those energies, clearing them, clearing fear, clearing anger, and allowing these spirits to move on in peace.
Could you explain then what the spirit world is?
Well, the spirit world, again, all shamanism basically is made up of this big grid of energy. Some people call it source, some people call it the universe, some people call it God, But ultimately, within that world, there are spirits who linger, who haven't had the opportunity to move on, haven't had the strength to move on. Now, generally, by and large, if a spirit is lingering around in our plane, there's a reason for it. For instance, they may have a message to pass on. They may not even realize that they've passed on themselves. So it's a question then of working with that, and helping them move on from that point of view. But ultimately, shamanism, there are three worlds in shamanism. When you're doing the shamanic journey, you visualize the three worlds. The upper world, which speaks of higher level spiritual wisdom, and you would have your angels, you would have your spirit guides up there, and it's very, I suppose, what most people would regard as being very close to God or higher spiritual influence. There's the middle world, and we are in the middle world, but our middle world goes on beyond the world that we are aware of, beyond our perspective, to encompass a world where there are spirits that have left body and are passing on. And again, there are lots of reasons why those spirits haven't fully passed on in their progression. They could have a message to pass on. They could realize they're not actually dead, or they may not have the energy to pass on fully. And that's a very important point, I suppose, in that it takes a lot of energy to pass on in your natural journey back to your soul family, to choose a point where you reincarnate from,
If someone is, say, stuck, right, and they don't realise they're dead, would that be a case of them just going about their daily business thinking they're still actually on this plane?
Pretty much. My perspective on those that pass on are, first of all, we can have shadows or ghosts, which is energetic residue or a shadow of a person that has no real substance to. The spirit actually has moved on, but some of their energy remains. But then there's those other spirits that are around us and interacting with us to some degree, One of the things is that as we interact with those energies, they are feeding off our energies as well. And ultimately they are going back to their soul family at some point once they realize that they are passed on. And sometimes with the work that I do, it is only a question of saying to them, well, look, you have actually passed on, you've actually died, go towards the life type of thing.
And then could you tell us about power animals and spirit guides?
As I spoke before about the shamanic journey, there's a very strict protocol to that, we'll say, or guidelines on how to do that. So one of the biggest things in shamanism is that you connect with guides. You connect to guides for safety, you connect to guides for information, you connect to guides for healing. So once we do that, we are tapping into that grid of energy or whatever, and that helps us move on and do the work that we have to do. But within that, you have your spirit guides. For me personally, I have a number of spirit guides, and it really is very, very personal, and spirit presents to you in a way that will help you understand the messages that are being put across. So I have a number of spirit guides. Padre Pio is a spirit guide. I have a number of power animals. I have a crow when I'm dealing with anyone who is or needs passed over fully. It's a crow. I have a giraffe for healing, of all things. So it really, these spirit guides present in a way to aid your understanding, to aid the work that you have to do. One of the things for me is that I have no particular connection to a giraffe per se, but that's a way, it has some meaning ultimately in the work that I'm doing. And I'm not fully aware of that, but that's the way it presents to me, and it works very, very effectively. So it really is a very personal thing. Power animals as well will present to give you strength and give you insight. For instance, one of my guides is a lion, and one of my guides is a wolf. Both those guides are there to give me strength, some form of boost, energetic boost, which helps me do the work that I have to do. And that's what you find. For instance, if you're feeling particularly timid or particularly disempowered, a lion may come along to give you strength, to give you courage. That's that perspective. So it is a very, very personal thing with your spirit guides.
When someone comes to you for shamanic healing, what kind of complaints would they have, and what would be the techniques you'd use in healing?
Generally, I work from the perspective I begin from the perspective of the chakras, and chakras are your energy points that give out and take in energy, and each one has a very specific meaning. For instance, the heart is about love for yourself, love for the people about you, your family, your friends, whatever. So, in terms of that, we are looking at various perspectives around what is impacted on the person. I get a lot of people who have come across emotional difficulties. Could be child abuse, could be the breakup of relationships, all those sorts of things. Now, if everything is energy, as it is in the shamanic perspective, we have to work at clearing that energy. In the case of bereavement, it's bringing that energy out in a very controlled way so that the person doesn't fall apart, yet releases that energy. So that's what I do. I release a lot of that energy. If that energy isn't released, ultimately it can end up in physical ailments, can end up in very, for the heart perspective, it can end up with heart difficulties, can end up with lung difficulties, because that area of the body is related very much to bereavement, loss and separation, that type of thing. So I would work to release that energy, working with my guides to come in and help clear that.
When people hear the word shamanism, they think of Native Americans. So could you talk about the Irish tradition of shamanism?
Oh, absolutely. There's no real reason why one should focus purely on Native Americans.
Yeah.
There are many, many cultures who have this commonality among them, the ability to connect into spirit and use that for whatever reason. It could, in the ancient societies, it would have been to find herds of buffalo or herds of whatever to go out and feed the tribe. But there's so much more to it than that. I mean, obviously, we can interact with guides and bring healing as well. There's many, many instances of shamanic practice through our Irish tradition. And you can see it from a lot of the stories, and a lot of the myths and fables and whatever, of the likes of the Ossianic cycle of Finn McCool and the Ulster cycle with Cuchulainn and that type of thing. There are many, many stories that talk of people initiating shamanic journeys, initiating shamanic healing. And it's the same in all cultures. I mean, a lot of the stories are very, very similar in the Native American tradition, the Aboriginal tradition in Australia, and here in Ireland as well. It very much is commonality, and it's about linking into that spirit, And to some degree, it is the ancient Irish theology in terms of the fairy faith and those tapping into those energies. Of course, in this time and age, we would look at it very differently. But in terms of elves and fairies and all those energies, they are simply energies. They're not little winged creatures that float about and look very cute. Mm-hmm. They are very specific energies of the land and of the world. So it's about that, you know. It's about connecting with those energies, recognizing them for what they are. And from the Irish perspective, it's very much to do with the fairy faith that was in the Druidic tradition and beyond that. So it's as much an Irish phenomenon as it is a Native American or a Peruvian or Mexican or whichever. Very much is of the same level of standing as any of those.
As a shamanic healer, what are the various services you'd offer?
Well, again, you know, I would work a lot of ways in a lot of different areas. I would do a lot of divination or a lot of reading. So I would do a lot of readings for people to get a bit of an insight on where they're going with their life, you know, the negative things in their life, the negative energies in their life, and then hopefully clearing that, you know, making their lives a wee bit better, you know, and their perspective a wee bit better, therefore leading them down the road to a better spiritual path in their own perspective. I mean, one of the biggest things for me is actually making this very real for people, so that once they link into spirit, they can actually feel it and they feel the realness of it. So there's a lot of perspectives. That's just one aspect of it. That's reading. Healing is a major aspect of it. And there's a lot of areas in shamanic healing. Obviously, it's about clearing the energy. You're working with energy and you're clearing that energy. But one of the biggest techniques, I suppose you would say, would be soul retrieval. Now, the concept of soul loss is that when you encounter a trauma in your life, you lose a piece of your soul because it's just too harsh to deal with. You lose a piece of your spirit or your essence. And for a shamanic practitioner, it's about going off to the spirit world, working with your guides and bringing that soul piece back, integrating that then into the person in a very meaningful way so that they become fully functioning. So from that perspective, it could be any trauma at all. You know, I work a lot, again, with victims of child abuse. I work a lot with people who are finding great difficulty dealing with breakups of relationships. I work with a lot of people who have great grief or bereavement, great loss in their life, and try to bring them to a place where they're more fully functioning, they're more able to deal with the world, you know, they're more productive in their lives, and ultimately that they're more spiritually connected. That's another perspective on it. We deal with past life healings, for instance, the energies that we may bring into our lives from past lives. You know, it could be anything, phobias, it could be actual physical illnesses, anything like that. Also, from a family perspective, there are energies that are passed down the family line that are not great energies. It could be the energies of addiction, it could be the energies of depression, any of those things at all. So again, it's about working with my spirits to clear those energies away so that the people are more fully functioning. I would do a lot of work also with the clearing of spirit. For instance, in a home, spirit can have the tendency to linger and to disrupt things, as I'm sure you're aware of, you've heard. So I would clear that energy from that space and hopefully, that's the energy of spirit, of course, hopefully allow those spirits to move on in their own particular journey. So there'll be a lot of death and dying work, preparing people for moving on in their journey, preparing people to die, and their own particular perspective on it. I mean, obviously it's one of the great fears in life. And again, shamanism is about removing the fear and putting people in touch with the great grid of energy, the great love that's there for them when they pass on. So it's a question of working with that and dealing with all the fears that are around that. It's very, very broad, Rita, and it's very difficult to give you a short snapshot of that, you know. But that is some of the most important work that I would do.
And then how can people get in contact with you?
Well, I work out of two places, really. One is in Castlebar, where you're at yourself, and one is in Belfast. I work out of Atlantis in Castlebar. That's on Lennon Hall Street with Aldo, who runs the place down there. Absolutely fantastic individual. And I suppose at this point they can give him a wee shout out. Thanks for the work that he's done to help me along my way. You know, I've been working there for about 2 years, and slowly coming up in people's understanding. People are beginning to find out what shamanism is all about. And with anything like this, you're dealing with a big fear aspect. So it's clearing that fear. And Aldo's helped a lot with that.
They're great in there. They really are.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. So it's a question of putting that information out, and that's what Aldo's been doing, putting that information out to people, and in a really unthreatening way, so that they see that all their fears are unfounded, really. So I've been working there, doing a lot of work there, doing a lot of readings, doing a lot of workshops. I would say the bulk of the work that I would do right now is about teaching people how to connect with spirit, because we're all more than capable of doing that. So I've been doing a lot of workshops, things on soul retrieval, things on past life healing, all those sorts of things. I'm beginning a meditation group down there too. Again, any type of meditation, anything like that, puts you in contact with spirit in a very positive way, and helps you along. So we're doing that at the moment. In the new year, we're doing a Finding Your Soul Purpose workshop, which hopefully will take us to a place with people where they can, again, tap into spirit, look back in the past, what hasn't been working with them in their lives, what has been, where they want to go with their lives, and then putting a plan in place to get them there. Basically, as simple as that. So we're doing a lot of work in Castlebar. I would spend, I think it's 6 days a month in Castlebar. Now, I'm based in Newry in County Down, so it's quite a trek over there, but ultimately worth it. I'm also working at Belfast, the Earth Angel Holistic Centre in the Antrim Road, and doing very similar types of work there as well. So I can be contacted at any of those places, but I'm also on Twitter, I'm on Facebook. I would do the majority of my work on Facebook, actually. I have a website, anamnasca.wordpress.com. Any of those things people can get in contact with me. My email, actually, if anyone's interested, is anamnasca@gmail.com. They can call up at any time or drop me a line or whatever and ask any of the questions that need to be asked.
Fantastic. And I'll put the link to all those up on the Crypt's Facebook page after the show as well.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Fair play. Well, Declan, it's been so interesting talking to you, and thanks so much for coming on the show today.
No, it's my absolute pleasure. It's lovely speaking to you.